Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident God of Thunder. On this episode of Thor Talk, we'll be looking at how one change can drastically improve Avengers Endgame for its two most poorly portrayed characters, Thor and Hulk, on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
If it were up to me, Fat Thor would never have happened, but rather than focus on how Endgame fails to do what I want it to do, I'll instead be focusing on how it fails at what it wants to do, or at least what it sets up. I will not be changing anything that is already set up in Endgame, like Fat Thor or Professor Hulk, but I'll instead be focusing on how Endgame fails to capitalize on its own setups for Thor and Hulk, which in the end makes them the weakest characters in the film. So, if you've seen Endgame, you know how it goes for these characters. Thor is a broken fat drunk who gets a pep talk from his mom, which motivates him to fight Thanos and get beat up without any form of redemption. Banner gets tired of dealing with the Hulk, so he works in a lab until he can essentially take over the Hulk body, and he uses this body to snap his fingers and restore the universe. This does not work. Thor is not motivated by a desire to fight Thanos. He literally kills Thanos and feels nothing. Empty. Because it's too late. Because what haunts him is not Thanos at all. It's that he feels responsible for the decimation of the universe.
His head was over there, his body over there, and what was the point? I was too late.
That he could have stopped it, and he didn't. The trauma from this causes him to become a broken, fat drunk who is essentially given up. They do try to manufacture some motivation for Thor to want to fight Thanos, with Banner saying that Thor is scared of Thanos, but as Thor himself points out, this doesn't make any sense, and it's never addressed ever again. Banner, meanwhile, is the person least motivated by the snap. He doesn't lose anyone like Tony, Clint, or Thor. He isn't burdened by the responsibilities of this new world like Natasha or Steve. In a post-snap world, his life is better than ever. He's in control of the Hulk, and he becomes a celebrity.
Hulk out!
To put it simply, Earth loves Hulk. He's happy. But Banner, like Thor, blames himself for what happened. But while Thor blames himself for not taking actions to stop the snap, Banner didn't have such a direct opportunity, so he blames himself more for losing 2 fights to Thanos.
Why?
5 years ago, we got our asses beat. Except it was worse for me, because I lost twice. First Hulk lost, then Banner lost. And then we all lost.
No one blamed you, Bruce.
I did.
That he and the Hulk weren't strong enough to beat him, so this causes Banner to turn to a lab and take over the Hulk body. Banner is really the only character to specifically mention losing a fight to Thanos after Thanos is dead, whereas everyone else is more focused with the snap and the decimation. As it stands, the way things work out for these characters in Endgame fails them and their arcs. Bruce ends up snapping his fingers to restore the universe's population, but it's quickly overshadowed by Tony Stark's gauntlet snap, and the fact that Banner's only real motivation for snapping is because it's basic morality and what his ex-girlfriend would have wanted, so it doesn't really feel earned. Wearing the gauntlet does damage his arm, and the Russos have confirmed that the damage is permanent, but this isn't exactly a big sacrifice. This is Bruce Banner, not the Hulk. Banner has always valued his mind over his fighting ability, so why should he care if he's slightly less useful in a fight? It's like if the Hulk lost the ability to understand algebra. Then, after the snap, Banner joins the fight where he deflects the Outrider that Captain America already killed. He doesn't really do anything, which further shows how losing an arm matters very little. Plus, you can't help but feel like the snap was partially done to sideline the Hulk. He doesn't fight, and that arm injury is a good excuse to usher him out of the MCU and give the spotlight to newer characters that Marvel actually has the rights to do solo movies with. In the end, his big universe-restoring snap is lost in the ensuing chaos, and the Hulk personality never emerges. Previous MCU movies have established the Hulk personality as kind of being its own character separate from Banner, an impulsive, often childlike creature who wants to be accepted. Of course, you could argue that the two are truly merged and the Hulk is part of the arrangement, but because of the strange decision to get all of the Hulk's character development done off-screen, we're never entirely sure. It seems like Banner just made the choice and took over the body on his own after working in a lab. Even if you think that Banner's snapping is the perfect end for his arc, then what about the Hulk? Is having Banner save the world in the Hulk's body really the best thing for the Hulk's character? On the other side of things, Thor fights Thanos alongside Captain America and Iron Man, and while it was nice to see the big three reunited, Thor does absolutely nothing in the fight against Thanos. The most meaningful thing he does in the fight is make sure Mjolnir is within 50 feet of Captain America. He really doesn't challenge Thanos at all. What's worse is neither he nor Thanos speak a single word to each other. Iron Man speaks to Thanos, Captain America speaks to Thanos, Thanos speaks to both of them, but Thor doesn't say a single word to him, and Thanos returns the favor. If Thor truly has such a strong connection to Thanos that he had to be there, then why doesn't he say anything to him? In the end, Thor gets no redemption for his failure and is ignored further during his fight with Thanos. Thor, who cares the least about Thanos and only wants to undo the snap, fights Thanos, while Hulk, who cares the least about the snap and cares about his losses to Thanos, undoes the snap. The direction that these characters should have gone is clear. Thor should have snapped, and Hulk should have fought Thanos. Thor nearly does get to snap, but he is prevented from doing so because he's out of shape, and because it was briefly mentioned that the Tesseract gives off a low level of gamma radiation in the first Avengers movie.
She's throwing off interference, radiation. Nothing harmful, low levels of gamma radiation.
It emits a gamma signature that's too weak for us to trace.
What if instead of Thor getting a pep talk from his mom and being knocked around by Thanos, Thor did snap, undoing his greatest failure and actually redeeming himself? It would also round out his character arc much better than when discussed by writer Christopher Marcus when he talked about rounding out the arcs of these characters with callbacks to their first movies. Steve misses his dance and gets a dance. Tony saves his own life and gives it up. Thor has a very memorable shirtless scene in Thor 1, and we wanted to give him another memorable shirtless scene in this one to sort of round out the arc. This guy wrote a Thor movie, and this is the only callback he could think of? A bad joke? Does Thor not have more impact than that? What if, instead of that, Thor puts on the gauntlet? He snaps his fingers, being willing to sacrifice himself to save those he endangered with his arrogance. Truly redeeming himself. Truly proving himself worthy. Again.
No!
Since Hemsworth wants to do more movies, this won't kill Thor, but he'd still basically lose an arm. However, this works much better for Thor. Not only would the loss of an arm be devastating, and thus much more impactful for a warrior like Thor, but Thor also has been missing an arm for the past 5 years in the comics, so it could technically be comic accurate and wouldn't be a clear attempt to sideline him like it was with the Hulk. Hulk, on the other hand, gets his rematch with Thanos, and I'm not going to get too much into the specifics because a whole fight scene is more complicated than a snap, but ideally Banner should address the Hulk personality. It doesn't have to be the Hulk emerging and beating Thanos into submission, but some indication that Hulk is on board with what has happened, to provide a satisfying ending for both Banner and the Hulk. Now, I'm not saying that these changes would fix everything. They certainly wouldn't. This movie would still have Thor becoming a fat alcoholic due to his depression, while his friends make fun of him for it. There's still no credible threat for most of the movie, and I don't even know where to begin with the Captain America thing. The directors and writers are still fighting about that one. But I do think these changes would improve the movie that the directors were trying to make. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. If you want to keep up with and support Thor Talk, simply subscribe. Once again, I'd like to formally state that all art and video is owned by its respective companies, and I own none of it. With that said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where...
You'll be holding